Hello, folks. It is September 14, Monday, and this is the Daily Word in the Crisis. You know, it sometimes feels strange to me to see things that I prophesied a number of years ago now coming to pass, when I'd almost forgotten that I'd put those things out there. One of those things is something that I wrote in my book, Visions of the Coming Days. It was published in 2012. I said then that no nation can long survive without a centered sense of national identity. So here's the direct quote from the book. I'll just read it to you. The center of our national identity will fragment. This is already in evidence and has progressed to the point that it cannot be stopped. Historically, incoming immigrants have always been eager to become Americans in both language and culture, but no longer. Preferring to create their own cultural and linguistic islands, incoming ethnic groups will be less and less inclined to become cultural Americans. This kind of diversity will shatter the centered national identity we once knew. As a result, politics will become increasingly splintered, and we will find it more and more difficult to come to any form of national unity. Racial and ethnic differences will lead to escalating tensions as we discover what European leaders already know, that multiculturalism does not work and that nations can only survive and thrive with a centered national consciousness. Well, when I wrote this, I didn't mean to imply that anyone should do away with their unique ethnicity entirely, or reject the good things that flow from their cultures of origin. After all, I'm a member of the Osage Nation, American Indian, and I do cherish the preservation of native customs, culture, and language. But I'm also very clearly part of the American culture in which I live. Every successful ruler of an empire in history has understood the principle of the need for a centered consciousness of national identity. For instance, in the book of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar had conquered Judah and Jerusalem, and he'd taken the majority of the population into exile in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar knew that to have a cohesive and stable empire, it would be important for all of his subjects to identify with Chaldean culture, whether or not that was actually right for his people, and whether or not Chaldean culture was godly. And so here was this group of Judeans with a heritage of monotheism now living at his doorstep. What to do? Well, his solution was to recruit young Judeans into his service and to indoctrinate them in Chaldean ways. So he drafted Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah into a 3-year indoctrination program. He even gave them Chaldean Babylonian names in the attempt to suppress their Jewish identities and make them into Chaldeans. So Daniel became Belteshazzar, while the other 3 were renamed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He was attempting to create cohesiveness in his empire. He was trying to create a centered sense of national identity. Of course, that involved idolatry that Daniel, his friends, and others with them could never be part of, but you see my point. Today in America, we actually have colleges and universities teaching revisionist history that undermines the foundations of liberty and faith that were laid by our founding fathers. Yes, some of those founding fathers were slave owners, that's true. They failed to see the full implications of the ideals that they had so eloquently stated. The culture of the day conditioned them to that blindness, but that doesn't negate the fact that what they articulated formed the basis of the prosperity and the freedoms our nation has known. So 12 years ago, I wrote that America was losing its cohesive sense of who we are as a nation. It's gone now. Despite the best efforts of our current president, it isn't coming back. We can't even seem to agree on English as an official language. Those who advocate that are called bigots and xenophobes. We can't seem to agree anymore on what our American values are. Politicians who are acutely aware of this and who are seeking votes are preaching either hatred of America, echoing the protesters in the streets, or they're presenting conflicting claims of what our national character is and should be, all in the name of an attempt to appeal to a collective national consciousness that no longer exists. This is a very dangerous state of affairs. The loss of a sense of national identity is one part of what ultimately brought about the fall of the Roman Empire, for instance. So the conflict now is much more than Democrat versus Republican or Biden versus Trump. When we say that this election is about a battle for the soul of the nation, I want you to understand it's about more, it's about more than philosophy of governance or economics. It's about identity. Who are we as a people? A century ago, masses of immigrants came here from Europe. The Irish, for instance, remained Irish, but came to identify as Americans in language and culture. Sicilians came here and remained culturally Sicilian, while at the same time they melted into American society and became Americans by identity. Jewish people fled Germany before and after World War II. They retained their Jewish customs and Jewish feasts, Jewish identity, but became clearly American, speaking the language and adapting to American culture. We're now seeing the end of that kind of national unity based in a shared identity as Americans. Barack Obama announced the agenda when he clearly stated years ago that he would fundamentally transform America. We're now seeing our cities burning and our national government paralyzed by such hatred that the two sides can't even speak in civil terms with one another. So I'm going to make a simple statement about where we as Christians must stand in all this. And I'm going to let Jesus say it as it was recorded in the Scriptures. In the midst of a disintegrating nation, this is where we as followers of Jesus must firmly stand, as difficult as that may sometimes seem. Jesus prayed to the Father about his heart for the disciples on the eve of the crucifixion. John 17. We'll start at verse 16. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I also have sent them into the world. For their sakes I sanctify myself, that they themselves also may be sanctified in truth. I do not ask on behalf of these alone, but for those also who believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, even as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you sent me. The glory which you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one, just as we are one. I in them, and you in me, that they may be perfected in unity, so that the world may know that you sent me and loved them, even as you have loved me. Father, I desire that they also, whom you have given me, be with me where I am, so that they may see my glory, which you have given me. For you loved me before the foundation of the world. O righteous Father, although the world has not known you, yet I have known you, and these have known that you sent me. And I have made your name known to them, and will make it known, so that the love with which you loved me may be in them, and I in them. Well, in the world around us right now, the nation we live in, our nation has lost its sense of collective identity. And if that's true, then we as Christians must not lose our sense of peoplehood in the Lord, no matter our ethnicity, no matter our skin color, no matter our national origin, or if we've lost it or never had it, then we need to pick it up. Our identity, that which binds us together, is the Spirit of our Lord Jesus Christ. Be very careful to keep right now especially, be very careful to keep any form of division out of your heart and out of the words that flow from your mouth. 1 Corinthians 3, begin at verse 16. Do you not know that you, that's plural in the Greek. You, plural as a people. Do you not know that you are a temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you, plural, as a people? If any man destroys the temple of God, this is verse 17. If any man destroys the temple of God, that means the church, all of us together in unity, God will destroy him. For the temple of God is holy, and that is what you are. We disciples of Jesus, we're a nation within a nation, and it's time to stand together. And I hope you all have a really great week.